All right. Thank you so much, Irfan. Welcome, everybody. Just want to say thank you so much for attending. You've made it through AxeCon. I think I'm the last time slot of sessions for the conference before some social events. So you've made it to the headliner, me. I'm just kidding. All jokes aside, I'm a product manager. I work on the Axe DevTools extension as well as the Axe account portal. I used to be a developer. And I'm just really excited to talk to you all about how we can make accessibility testing as efficient as possible. Um, let's just dive right into this because I have a lot to cover and I don't want to talk too fast and rush through anything. So, little agenda. The first thing we're going to talk about is how we can shift left in terms of our software development lifecycle, or our SDLC, how we can bake accessibility into our designs in the design phase of our SDLC by leveraging a Figma plugin that's completely free to use. Called Axe for Designers. And then we're going to move on to the earliest stages of development. We're going to kind of hand off some wireframes to a developer who I'm going to play as well, where we can make some code changes in our text editor and have Axe linter slap our wrists when we make silly accessibility mistakes. And from there, the natural evolution of a developer making code changes, saving those code changes, are going to always pop over to the browser. So while we're in the browser, testing our code changes, we can actually open up the Axe DevTools browser extension and run a series of automated, semi-automated, or intelligent guided tests, I'll call them, as well as some manual testing, which is a new feature we've added a couple weeks ago. And after we showcase the extension, we're going to wrap up by importing our extension issues that we find together into Axe Auditor, where an expert can take over and complete our full assessment. So we're going to pretend we're doing a full page assessment of a landing page. I'm going to describe what's on that page here in a minute. And so I know a lot of you are going to roll your eyes at some point during this presentation because it's going to come off like a sales pitch. But please don't take this as a sales pitch. I'm not a greasy used car salesman. I want to show you all how you can incorporate accessibility testing into every facet of your process. And if Axe tools, some of which I'm covering, are completely free, so highly recommend using those. But if the premium ones aren't for you, that's fine. I'm not judging. I just want to show you a nice recipe of, and no pun intended, because we're going to be looking at a recipe app of how you can get accessibility incorporated into your processes. So I'm going to share my screen now. We're going to get right into it. So what we're looking at, and I will zoom in here in a minute, but while I'm doing this overview, and full disclosure, I'm a Figma noob, so I don't know how to do much here, but I know enough to demonstrate what a designer might be doing. So if you are a designer and you're in the audience, you should be very familiar with this. If you're not, I'll describe what's on my screen. I have Figma application open with some designs. I'm going to select the right layer. Desktop one, and I'll describe what's in our application in these somewhat high fidelity wireframes. We have a header bar at the top with some nav items. We have a heading that says recipe dashboard with intentional accessibility issues. Yes, we have littered accessibility issues throughout this app to make our testing more fun today for demonstration purposes. Below that, we have some fun statistics about the recipes, like how many eggs I've used so far and how many grease fires I've caused. And then in the bulk of the main content, or the meat and potatoes of the page, once again, no pun intended, we have our recipes. I'm going to call them recipe cards, and they're just repeaters of recipe information. There's about 8 of them. And for each recipe card, we have a recipe image. We have a edit pencil icon that will show up in the top right corner. When clicked, that will launch an edit recipe modal. At the bottom of the image itself, there is the recipe name. The recipe name is white text with a dark translucent background, and both of those are overlaying the image itself. And so I want to give you a little teaser of an interesting accessibility challenge that we're going to work through today, which is just try to think about how many different color combinations there might be behind that text chocolate cake. And for that matter, any other image we might render under there. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of color combinations that we would need to run a color contrast analyzer for. And I think I have a cool trick up my sleeve of how we can leverage AI to automatically check color contrast there, but that will be later today. Below the banner of the recipe card with the image, we have a breakdown table of the prep time, the cook time, and the difficulty of the recipe. And then finally, the primary call to action of the recipe card is a cook action, which will open up a different modal, but it'll be the cook version, not the edit version of that modal. Below that, we have a full recipe breakdown table, which is basically a database dump of all of our recipes and their various pieces of metadata, like the name, the cook count, the prep time, the cook time, the difficulty, and more. And finally, we have a pretty standard footer with some carved out space for some social media links and a site-wide search. So I think we're ready to actually start looking at making accessibility testing as efficient as possible. After all, we are at AxeCon. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up what I believe is called, yes, the Resources tab. It's in the top menu bar of Figma. If you're a keyboard user or a power user, you can actually use Shift-I to open it up, which I just did. And from there, you want to activate the Plugins tab. And since I've recently used this awesome free-to-use Axe for Designers plugin, it's here, but you could always search all plugins right here and search for Axe. So I'm going to click that, and immediately, let me get Zoom out of the way. Immediately, we have a Axe for Designers pop-up appearing. And I'm going to dive right into the first feature that I want to show today, which is scan. I have the scan panel activated. And always good idea to make sure you target the right layer, because you can actually scan parts of your design or different layers. Sometimes there's actually a kitchen sink style design. So you want to make sure you're selecting the exact layers in your Figma designs that you want to scan. So I'm going to click scan. And sure enough, in a matter of milliseconds, we have 24 accessibility issues. We're not going to dive in and fix every single one, but just want to point out to the designers in the audience, or if you're a developer who works with designers, you definitely hand this tool over to them, because it helps tremendously catch issues as early in the software development lifecycle as possible, because finding issues later on in the process is going to be costly. It's going to give you headaches. It's going to cost the business more. So you want to find these issues and think about accessibility from the start, because it pays off and it helps create more accessible content. Ultimately, if we're delivering our developers designs that have made accessibility considerations, they're not going to go out of their way to not do them. So let's set our developers up for success and set our application up for accessibility success. All right, so 24 issues were found. We can actually highlight the given issue. I'll zoom in here in a second. I do apologize, it's a little small, but we found an issue, a color contrast issue with that recipe name. Like I said, it's like a translucent background with overlaying an image. So we can anticipate plenty of issues there, because we don't know what all images are going to be there. So it's definitely something to think about right now in the design phase. Beyond that, we have a different color contrast issue, because the primary call to action, that cook button I described, is actually light blue with some white text. And according to Axe for Designers, actually get the precise color contrast ratio, which is 2.81 to 1. And since this is smaller text, our target for WCAG AA would be 4.5 to 1. And beyond that, we got one more issue I want to show you, which is the pencil icon, or the edit recipe button that I described earlier, is actually only 35 pixels by 35 pixels. And that needs to be at least 44 by 44 to have a proper touch size. So right off the bat, I can actually fix a ton of things that I would have just tossed to my developers to implement, and then we'd ship an inaccessible product. So I already know of some things that I will have to do before I hand this off. The next feature of Axe for Designers I want to showcase is the color contrast check, which actually I can just point and click, select any text node in my designs, and it will quickly automatically run an accessibility contrast check on it. So I'm just going to select the H1. It's actually black text on a white background, so I anticipate that being quite compliant in terms of contrast. And sure enough, it says your color contrast is sufficient. It tells me what size they calculated for the font, which is 30 pixels, and the contrast ratio is 21 to 1, which far exceeds even AAA requirements. So we're doing good there. And so we could go through and click on all the different text nodes as we're building them, or maybe if you're building a design system, you want to make sure that all the different variants of your button have enough contrast. Just point and click at them, and then you'll see if you're compliant. The final thing I want to cover today is this annotations feature. I'm going to go back to selecting some stuff, and actually I will zoom in finally as promised. Let's go to 100%. All right. So I want to focus on the recipe card for a second and show how we can annotate it for accessibility, for accessibility considerations. So let's just take this chocolate cake card. It's the first one in the list, so we'll start with that. And right off the bat, I want to think about things like roles. We want to annotate what roles things will be, especially in terms of like text content like this, because a lot of times we style things like headings as designers, and developers aren't given the information that those should be marked up as headings. And so they just get marked up with something like div class H1 or something silly like that, rather than using an H1. So since we already covered our H1, which is recipe dashboard, I'm probably going to say that this chocolate cake, like each recipe name should probably be an H2. So what I can do is I activated the annotations tab. I can search for headings in the what annotations are you looking for input. I'll select that, then I'll select H2. believe this is marked up as somewhat of a radio group if you're using a screen reader. And then from there, I can actually click on the element. If I do command click, I believe that's how I do it. And I can choose where to add the annotation. I'll put it on the bottom, let's say. So as soon as I click that, yay, we have our first accessibility annotation. And it says, pointing at chocolate cake, it says H2 or role of heading and ARIA level of 2. So that's how you could code this thing, how a developer could code this thing to be an H2 semantically. Far more preferable to use an H2, obviously, but there's different talks that I'm sure covered that theme. So that's one thing we can think about. But there's all sorts of other considerations we need to make in terms of annotations, not just roles, which of course we can mark all these things up as buttons, and we should, but also things like accessible names, like alt text of images, or deciding what images are decorative, which I would say this chocolate cake image is decorative because we have a heading to supplement that, that has the text that I would probably put as the image alt text. So a good rule of thumb there is if I remove that image from the page, would any information be lost? And I'd probably say no. I think because the chocolate cake heading is there, we don't need to convey that redundant information. Another thing we want to consider are things like tooltips or accessible names of buttons that only have iconography used, like this pencil icon that we know we need to make bigger. Remember, 44 by 44 pixels. So what I can do is target that pencil icon button, and I'm going to search for buttons because I know it should be a button. But I'm actually I would obviously set an annotation for the role to be button, but we've already shown you how to do that. I want to show you a cool little trick that I'll call the label and name, but it's actually the way I can dictate to my developer what to set as the ARIA label on this. Or actually in this case, I want to go above and beyond and set a tooltip so we get visible text. So even if anyone's confused about what that pencil actually means, let's just be descriptive. When we can, we should. So same thing, I've targeted the element. I'm going to select label and name. We can add this to the top, sure. But I'm actually going to select this edit annotation button. So I'm going to say add tooltip with text, and I'll put some quotes in the text, edit, and then since I'm a developer, I'll write it out in handlebar style notation, but you should get the point. I'm saying edit and then the recipe name. So in this example, it would be edit chocolate cake. But to save myself some time as a designer, I don't want to go through and annotate every pencil icon. I want to kind of templatize it. So I'm saying edit recipe.name. As soon as I hit apply, we got a beautiful blue annotation. My developers will know to use our tooltip component in our design system, and we'll ship something accessible. Hooray. That's what we want, right? Side note, if you do sign up for the beta for Axe for Designers, you will get access to to make use of our AI, which will actually automatically annotate the designs for you in case you're concerned that you don't have expertise enough to just decide on things like roles. And you might be concerned that no one on your dev team is equipped to make those decisions. So I would say if your organization does have someone or a team of experts who do know the ins and outs of accessibility, pull them in the design phase, have them review it with you and walk through what they would recommend for the roles. And I think you'll find that you'll pick up stuff pretty quickly. I definitely do. Like I came to DQ over a decade ago with zero experience in accessibility. And just by building and using our own tools, I've become an expert. I've even contributed to the ARIA spec. So I will say that all these tools I'm covering today are obviously catered to testing and finding accessibility issues, but I think they're kind of disguised as learning tools as well. So definitely a cool potential for learning as you go. So, okay, let's pretend that we're done with our design work. We have annotations everywhere. It's looking beautiful. The developers are excited to work on it. Now I'm going to pass it off to myself, put on a different hat, my developer hat, and let's see how we can bake accessibility into my dev process. So first thing I'm going to do is switch over to Visual Studio Code. Irfan, maybe you can toss a link in chat for the Axe linter for VS Code plugin. It's free to use as well. I'm still not selling you anything. Don't worry. So easy to use. You install this plugin and it will lint your code. So for those who don't know what linting is, I'll give you a quick spiel about what it is. Linting, you can think of, if you're not a technical person or a developer, it's really like spell check for your code, but it's not actually looking for spelling issues. And actually on my screen, I have an example of a red squiggly line showing up underneath my image tag. But what you can think, linting in general is actually going to a tool developers often use to find common issues that would result in something like a compiling error or a build error, or maybe you're using an unused variable in your JavaScript that will result in an error in the browser. So it's a great way to slap your wrists with things that can be automatically detected just by analyzing your code statically. So Axe linter for VS Code is the same thing. but it's obviously has an emphasis on accessibility. So it's not about build errors or, necessarily valid HTML, although that does come into play. It's more about what you're coding currently that might result in a accessibility issue. So what we're looking at, as I said, we have a red squiggly line with image. It has a source as well as a class name, but no alt text. So a little foreshadowing there. So if I hover over that, we get a little tooltip that says Axe linter image alt ensures image elements have alternate text or a role of none or presentation. So right off the bat, I'm actually learning how to make an accessible image. But if I wanted to know even more, just like in Axe for Designers, I think I skipped that part. A lot of those rules have help pages for them that you can click, and it'll open up a new tab in your browser. I'm not going to open that right now, but there's a full page all about how you can determine if an image is informative or decorative and how to write good alt text and all that good stuff. In this case, I think I already covered it. I would actually probably go with the role of presentation because I think this should be marked up as a decorative image. Like I said, the heading already covers that same information. There's other cool things you can do. Like if I type in a button, doesn't have any text yet, it's going to yell at me saying, hey, ensure that your button has discernible text, Axe linter. So it can catch a lot of low-hanging fruit. You can, for those of you who are familiar with Axe Core, you can think of Axe linter as a subset of what Axe Core can check because there are some limitations. Axe linter doesn't know how this actual component. I've opened up my recipe card component, by the way. They don't know how that component's going to be rendered. They don't know what kind of third-party CSS is going to be injected in the page. So we can't run things like color contrast checks. It's just not feasible. But that's what we'll get that base covered in the browser here in a minute. So I've shown you some very simple examples. So you're probably thinking, oh, Harris, that's just so cute. Your little linter works with really basic semantic HTML examples. But us in the real world, we use custom components in our design system. And that's a valid question. And I'm here to tell you today that Axe linter goes far beyond these simple examples that I showed you. And I'm going to get right into it. So through, I've now switched to my axelinter.yaml config file. And I'll try to describe what's on it, but I want to focus on a small part of this config. So what this will allow me to do is inform linter what's going on under the hood for my custom components. It'll tell, we'll provide mappings to describe to linter how our components work under the hood, if you will. So I did actually import, we do have support for some more common or popular libraries, so you don't have to write the mappings yourself. And we will be adding more of those as we get time to do so. Right now I've imported MUI or Material UI, which is super popular. And I think they've actually made some pretty good accessibility improvements, over the years. So good on them. And we also are importing Cauldron React, which is DQ's pattern library. You might have attended my colleague Rachel's talk about it yesterday. Really great talk, and we got to focus on Cauldron, which was really fun. But below that, I have this global components property declared in my YAML file, and I want to focus on this component that I'm calling my custom button. It's camel cased. It's like an uppercase M, so it's not a standard or native HTML element. It's a completely custom React component. And here I have within that my custom button declaration, I have an element property with the value of button. So that's how we tell Axe linter, hey, my custom button component ends up rendering a HTML button. And linter goes, oh, okay, I think I know what's going on there. You probably need some discernible text, at least as a start, which I showed you a minute ago with using a native HTML button. Below that, it's where it gets interesting. In React, we have these things called props, which is essentially a way to configure a component, or if you're a developer, you're essentially passing an argument to your component. They don't always directly map to anything that gets rendered, but a lot of times they do. And so for those things that do, we want to tell Axe linter, at least about the important ones, about how it works. So I have a declaration here that says aria-star, which says map all aria attributes to the HTML element that gets rendered, which again, we've already told it is button, meaning if I set an aria described by on my my custom button component, it would end up rendering an aria described by on the button that gets rendered. Below that, we have an action property, which is actually a prop of my custom button component. That's not to be confused with the native form HTML property called action. This is a custom prop in React that I'm saying actually ends up mapping to the button's type. So here in my little comment example, I instantiate a my custom button component, and I set action to the value of submit. So what that ends up rendering is a button with a type of submit. And finally, another cool thing is this my custom button component accepts a label prop. So this example, I'm instantiating it and setting label equals foo. That ends up rendering text. So that becomes button open tag with a text foo and then button close tag. So this can get really complicated, but it actually is a great way to enforce accessible use of your component library. And now I know some of you might be in chat already saying, yeah, cool, Harris. We actually use TypeScript, or we have other ways. We use prop types. We have ways of enforcing accessible use of our pattern library. So no thanks, this sounds annoying. But I think you could be wrong depending on how you've coded your patterns. So I actually was one of the original contributors of Cauldron, so I know how tricky implementing generic components that everyone at your organization needs to use for all the different applications. There's so many different use cases that collide for the needs of specific components. And I'll use a really specific example today. I've imported Cauldron's icon component as well as a button component. And today I want to create a icon button. I'll compose those two together to do something like this. I'm typing out our uppercase B button. It's our Cauldron custom button. And right away, by the way, Linter's yelling at me saying you don't have any text in there. I'll say, calm down, Linter. I'm adding an icon. I can give my icon a type. Let's say add user. It's going to render a little avatar icon. And then here we go. Oh, as soon as I close that tag, I get that issue again. It says ensures buttons have discernible text. I'm like, okay, I guess I get it. So backstory, our icon component is used in tons of different apps at DQ. Sometimes those icons are decorative, sometimes they're informative. So the way we set an accessible name on our icon in our React component library is via a label prop. So I can set label equals add user, and my issue goes away. And you're like, cool, just make label required prop, and then TypeScript will handle this for you. But what if I have a use case where the label itself isn't really providing anything useful? It's just a decorative icon. So we need to, the moral of the story here is we have this icon component. Sometimes it's used in an informative fashion. Sometimes it's used in a decorative fashion. So we can't sanely enforce the use of the label prop there. Because what if I wanted to do something like this, add user? Would I set add user as the accessible name of the icon that's rendered to? Then the button's text would be add user, add user. That's silly and that's redundant. So what I'm trying to say is your patterns need to be flexible. You have tons of different use cases. You can't always enforce stuff with code like TypeScript. So Axe Auditor is a great way to kind of be that extra layer wrapping around your existing processes, your existing validation, and it'll enforce accessible use of your components. So I think it's really powerful. In case you're wondering, we do dog food the heck out of all of our products. I use Axe Auditor daily when I write code. I write a lot less code these days as a product manager, a lot more meetings. But I think it's a really great product. And like I said, it's free to use. So just install it if you can. And I think you'll be very happy with the results. Okay, so let's pretend that we've made, actually, I won't pretend, I'll hit save. I just made a code change. I'm a developer. I'm going to go pop over to my browser now. That's always the next step. I use Mac, so I'm always just swiping back and forth between my editor and my browser. And so what I'm going to do right now is I won't necessarily have to describe the app that's rendered. I got my local host server running of the recipe app that we went over in the wireframe stage. Actually, you can see this silly add user button that I just added. That's really ugly at the top, but that's just for demo purposes. And then docked to the right side of my browser, I have Axe DevTools browser extension open. And I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to click scan all of my page, and it's going to work just like that Axe for Designer scan. Within a matter of a second, we have 18 accessibility issues found. Some of these accessibility issues should look familiar because we actually found them in earlier stages. So I really shouldn't have gotten here with these issues, but I just want to show you how you can incorporate accessibility testing. If you don't have Axe for Designers or your designer refuses to use them, catching stuff as early as possible is fine. So if you're catching it here before I actually submit a pull request and ship my code to production, we're still sitting pretty. We're still saving some time, which is great. These issues that were found are broken down into a few categories. We have elements must meet color contrast thresholds, which is, again, that cook primary call to action in the recipe card. If my designer had used that, I would have caught that earlier, and they would have shipped me a design with a darker color blue background or something, for example, to meet those color contrast requirements. So we have 8 of those, one for each of the recipes. Below that, We have images must have alt text. Again, we should probably mark that up as a decorative image, and then this issue will go away. And then finally, our third category of issues are in the footer, and it's these social media icons. I got a GitHub link and a LinkedIn link to view DQ on GitHub and LinkedIn, and they actually don't have any accessible text. We can learn more about each issue. Below that, we have a nice description of what the issue is. Of course, there's always help pages for you every step of the way. And we can actually inspect in DevTools. We can look at this anchor. It says anchor href github/DQ labs. If I go into that, all we'll see is the icon. It's ARIA hidden. There's no accessible name on it. So if a screen reader user hit this footer link, it would just say link empty or link blank, which is bad. We don't want that. We want to say something like link view GitHub, view DQ on GitHub. But I did promise you I would show you how our robots can help us. Let me turn off highlight here. How robots can help us test one of the more complicated challenges in terms of color contrast. And so Axe Core, which is the accessibility rules engine running under the hood here, raised 8 needs review issues. These needs review issues is basically one for each recipe name, because Axe is like, whoa, dude, you have a lot going on here. We can't with just JavaScript, we're not going to be able to calculate the contrast ratios because there's probably about 1,000 of them. If we went through, I'll zoom in, we went through and like just grabbed the white foreground text color and then looked at every single adjacent pixel color, because behind the word chocolate is some chocolate icing, but behind the word cake we have like the white plate and then the silver fork. So there's so many different colors at play. Axe Core is just like, calm down. I need your brilliant fleshy human brain to calculate all these different color contrast ratios. But I'm lazy or efficient or something, and I don't want to spend all my brain power on running about 2,000 color contrast calculations. So I'm going to use this awesome feature of the extension. I'm hovering over right now. It says we found 8 color contrast issues for you to review. Click here to automatically review them. So I'm going to click that. And it's going through each one. You'll see text flashing because it's doing all sorts of cool computer vision AI checks. And voila, it actually says we went through and calculated all those thousands and thousands of color combinations, and every single one passed. Right now, our selected accessibility testing standard is WCAG 21AA, and it actually determined that all of these headings pass 4.5 to 1 color contrast threshold. So we didn't have to review anything. Yay. I love not having to do stuff. And so here's where I would normally start my guided tests, by saving my test. But for demo purposes, I actually have a nice save test waiting for us with a lot of progress done on, like I said, this full audit that we're doing. And the theme here is I want to show you how you can divide and conquer, share the workload of accessibility. It shouldn't be a burden. If the designers are doing their job, getting accessibility baked in, the developers doing their job, doing what they can do, and you do have an expert on site who can actually wrap up a full assessment, they'll actually have a lot less work to do if you've done all of the prerequisite steps that I just described. So I'm in a save test. I called it AxeCon 2024 recipe dashboard, because we're testing the recipe dashboard. I'm going to go over to the guided test tab, where you'll see I'm actually 57% complete. I've run the modal dialog tool, the interactive elements tool, the structure tool, and the forms tool. And let me quickly describe what intelligent guided tests are. Intelligent guided tests do not require any accessibility expertise. The only thing you need prerequisite-wise is knowledge of the application or the page that you're testing. And it's going to just ask you a series of simple questions, often yes or no. And behind the scenes, under the hood, the IGTs do the heavy lifting and help you arrive at some of the more hard-to-find accessibility issues. So I'm going to showcase my 2 favorite IGTs, the table IGT. It's relatively new. It incorporates AI. It saves me ton of time. Tables are a headache to test. If you're an expert, you know that. Or if you've ever had to try to test tables, they can get really complicated really quickly. So let's start with the table IGT, because I think that'll do a better job explaining what IGTs are just by demonstrating than I could ever do. So I just hit start new table run, and it says, okay, get your page in the right state, make sure we're all ready to go, and then hit start. So we're going to do that. It says it's loading. It's capturing screenshots of each of the tables it can scrape from the page. What's happening behind the scenes, if you're curious, is we have a virtual representation of the DOM, and we go and find all the things that use the table tag or role equals table. And it found 9 on the page. And that's no surprise because there are 8 recipes that each have their own table. And then remember, I described at the beginning, there's a full recipe breakdown table here at the bottom of the page. And that's probably the most complicated one we have. It has the most rows. So let's test that because it'll be the most fun. So I'm going to hit next after selecting that full recipe breakdown table. There's, by the way, on the screen, there are little screenshot thumbnails of each table that was found. If you're a non-sighted user, we do have a keyboard and assistive technology friendly way of viewing this virtualized DOM, so you can do things like make element selections or understand what's highlighted on the page. So I'm going to select this full recipe breakdown and hit next. Okay, now that we're testing this table, it's going to ask us one quick question. It says, all right, what type of data table is this? And there's a number of options. There's a table with 1 row of headers, which is what our table is. But let me show you the other options. We have a table with 1 column of headers. We have a table with 1 header row and 1 header column. And then we get into the complex, the scary tables that are a table with irregular headers, maybe like a single header cell associated with a range of cells. And we also have a table with multi-level headers. And that's pretty complex, but we do support testing that. So luckily, we have a pretty simple table. So let's test that. I'm going to hit next. And there's a little cute robot icon that's showing up and it says, wait while our AI scans the table. And there's actually a number of time savers that are happening right now. It's running a kind of a heuristic analysis on the whole table. It's trying to predict where things like table headers are. And other things like that. And now it's going to take a screenshot of each cell to make testing easier. We kind of try to take thumbnail screenshots of each element that you're going to need to review. So your testing is a little quicker and easier. So it's asking me to look at each of it's going to have me iterate through every single cell on the table. Hopefully not have to go through it all. And it will ask me questions about each data cell's header. So it's saying we're testing this name field, or name cell, I should say, which is the first row, first column, top left corner of our table. And it gives me the accessible name and what the assistive technology readout would be. But there's this cool little blurb here with that cute little robot icon that says, our AI identified this as a header cell. If this is correct, click the "This is not a data cell" button below. And so really, and just to give you full transparency, let's inspect. Let's take a break from our IGT real quick and inspect this table. And sure enough, we have a table with a T head, so we're good. That's where you put your table headers. But in that T head row, we have nothing but TDs. Oh no. TDs represent data cells and THs represent table headers. So shame on you, Harris. You coded in a very inaccessible table, but AI actually detected that for me, and I can actually just click "This is not a data cell" across this whole header row. I think I know what I need to do, but let me finish my testing. All right, so now we're to the first real data cell, which is the first recipe, first name cell, which is chocolate cake. And sorry if this is lunchtime for you, you're probably going to be hungry by the end of this. Hungry for both food and for efficient accessibility testing. So let's take a look at what we got here. So we have an accessible name of chocolate cake. And right now it's saying the assistive technology with the selected header below, we'll get to that in a minute, would be, the output would be name chocolate cake, which is exactly what we want. We want screen reader users to know that they're on the chocolate cake cell and that happens to be the name of the recipe, because it might not always be obvious. And so an additional cool thing that AI has done for us is it actually pre-selected that thing that it predicts is the header cell for chocolate cake, which is the name cell, that top left corner. And so it selected it for me. Of course, if AI wasn't turned on, or we had such a complicated table that AI wasn't able to detect anything, we didn't have any style differences. Like this header cell has a gray background with bold text compared to the data cell that has a white background with normal font weight. We could select the element ourselves, like with a mouse, like I just did, but I will quickly delete that selection. Or like I said, there's always the element selector where we can make selections with our keyboard. Don't worry, we got you covered everywhere. So I'm going to click next because AI did the heavy lifting for me. And it's going to actually do this the whole way. It pre-selected the next expected header. It knows what's going on now. It's gotten enough information. In fact, we'll see this new thing appear below where I select my headers and it says, hey, if the rest of your table is the same and you're done testing all your headers with at least one data cell, which we are, you can skip the testing of the rest of this table. So I'm going to say I'm done testing this table. Yay, we tested our table. It only took us 4 minutes, and I was, to be fair, blabbering on a lot during the course of that demonstration. It probably would have been quicker if I wasn't talking. But yeah, we found 7 issues, and there's no surprise because we have 7 table headers missing table header semantics. So I'm going to hit finish, and really easy fix I can make. I can just go and switch those TDs with THs, maybe a little styling change, but not the end of the world. But before we do that, I want to showcase the keyboard tool. It looks like we're great on time, by the way, because I did fail to mention, but to keep you here, after we import our data into Axe Auditor, I'm going to showcase a feature that the dev team of the extension is hard at work on. I'm really excited about it. It's not out yet, but unless you caught Dylan's talk on Tuesday, this might be brand new to you, but I'll just leave it at that. We're going to start testing the keyboard IGT now, and I'm going to hit start. Before I do, I want to assure you that there are some really cool pieces of automation going around as I hit start. It's going to automatically tab through the page. I'm not going to hit tab. I'll put my hands up for those of you who can see my video feed, and you'll see that it's actually driving the browser, tabbing through the page as if I were a keyboard-only user. It's going to show me the natural tab order of my page. It really gives me a great idea of what my keyboard user's experience will be. But while it's actually tabbing through the page, it's going to look for so many different things. So I'll try to describe that as it's happening. When hit start, hands up, no tab keys are harmed. And for each tab stop, it's going to look at so much different stuff, like what role the tab stop has, what the accessible name of the tab stop is. And actually, it's going to do some cool computer vision to check if there's a focus indicator present or not, because we know we need to have focus indicators so keyboard-only users know where the heck they are in our page. All right, so it's done. It actually finished before I was even done giving my spiel. Pretty quick. It tabbed through the page and found 15 tab stops in total. If you're like a sports fan, or maybe it's like a Sports Center instant replay, we do support that. You can click replay tab order and get a nice pop some popcorn and watch it once again just to see what a keyboard user's experience would be, what the sequence looks like. Make sure you don't have any errors there. But with that, I'm going to hit next. And it's capturing all the potential tab stops, and it's using AI again to try to predict where missing tab stops might be. And now it's asking me to select any elements not already highlighted that should be in the tab order. We do convey what things are highlighted in this element selector. So if you're a assistive technology user, you can actually cycle through all the highlighted elements and then view additional information about each element, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. We're not going to leave you out to dry with requiring sight here. And so AI has went ahead and tried to predict a number of missing tab stops. I'm actually going to correct it in a few cases. It falsely detected our prep time as a missing tab stop. But what was really great is I was going to have to go forth and select the cook buttons of each recipe card, because those are actually skipped in the tab order. If we look at them real quick, it's actually just a div with class button. Silly Harris, what are you doing? So actually, AI helped me there by saving me time and not having to select these elements manually. I can just hit next. The final piece where AI is going to help us is on this final question, which is, we've detected some elements in the tab order which lack a role which indicates interactivity to assistive technology. In other words, we have all these pencil icons that are marked up as divs with tab index. So they were in the tab order, but they're missing a role which would tell an assistive technology user or a screen reader user that, hey, this thing's clickable. This is a button. So AI went ahead and pre-selected the fact that these are all interactive elements, or they're supposed to be, and I can just hit next. I didn't have to do much. And so it's going to take some screenshots to make our reporting a little better. When I generate a report, we'll get screenshots for each issue found. I'm going to take a sip of water. And sure enough, we found 20 issues in our page just relating to keyboard. We found visual focus indicators that were missing in our top menu bar. The dashboard and the blog links are missing focus indicators. We have an issue for each cook chocolate cake or cook button, because there's no way to get to that element and activate it with a keyboard. And then finally, we have the pencil icon issues, which again, we just need to add a button roll there. So I'm gonna hit finish. I know we're close on time. I'm gonna do a buzzer beater as usual. I'm gonna quickly export some issues so we can import them into Auditor. But before I do that, I want to quickly showcase a brand new feature in the extension, which is to raise a manual issue. We do have content that will walk you through the remaining testing to be performed after you've run all of your IGTs and your automated scan. So let's pretend we're testing something that isn't covered by an IGT, like a carousel. So what I can do is search for an issue. Let's just by carousel, and it says there's a few. Carousel has no stop or pause mechanism. If you're familiar with WCAG, you can actually search by WCAG checkpoint. And we can select 2.2.2.b. We can select some relevant elements to our fake carousel and then hit save. And then sure enough, we'll have a issue raised manually. And the final part of this demo, I'm going to export a JSON representation of all the issues we just found to be imported into Axe Auditor, which did expire my session. Give me 1 second to re-authenticate with Axe Auditor. Axe Auditor is a manual testing tool. So this is where I'm going to do a handoff as a developer to my central accessibility team, who's actually going to completely complete our full assessment. So I'm going to go, we're testing the home page. I'm going to click start testing. I'm going to skip automated testing because I've already done that in the Axe extension. And so I'm just going to click start testing again. And there's this new control here that is available called import issues. And I can do exactly that. I will take that JSON report that I just generated and import it. And you'll see my testing progress went from 0 to 13%. And you'll see that some of the checkpoints have been marked in progress or complete based on the intelligent guided testing I've done. All right. I'm sorry I'm eating into our Q&A time, I know, but I just have 30 seconds of a demo because I'm really biased towards the Axe extension. I want to show you what's coming next. So I'm actually going to pray to the demo gods that they're not going to screw me over here. And I'm switching to my local build of the extension. Super unstable, super risky, but let's try it. Let's see what we can do. So I want to introduce you all today to a new feature called, give me 1 second. Userflow analyzer. And sure enough, the demo gods are testing me today. All right. I need to log in with a different account, I suppose. All right. So I don't have an account set up, but I will show you a quick video of what I was talking about. I was hoping to do a live demo. I really apologize.
So it's
All
a
right.
pro feature, right, Harris?
This is a pro feature. It's a beta feature. It will launch hopefully within the next few weeks, at most a month. I'm going to play it right now. So hang on. All right, so it's called user flow analysis, and it will let you test multi-state, multi-page complex user flows, like a checkout experience that you have on your e-commerce site. And it will allow you to manipulate your app and have Axe be automatically run in each unique state of your app that you record. So I'm going to hit play here, and it's going to, I'll try to describe what's happening on the screen. So I'm clicking the scan user flow button. It says recording. One event recorded, the full page scan has taken place. I've opened up a modal on the test page and it detected that, ran a scan, found 37 issues. I closed the modal and it detected that and found another 19 issues. Hooray. And so it actually generated a report. So I just clicked view report once I clicked stop recording. And sure enough, I do have that report open for what it's worth. Sure enough, we have a nice, pretty report that you should be used to if you're an Axe Pro user. That has all the issues found across your various states. We have the initial page state, which is the resting state of our app. 18 issues. That number should look familiar. That's probably what we found when we tested this earlier. Then we have an issue of a form element missing a label in our dialog. And that's pretty much it. Sorry that I didn't have my
No problem. No
my
problem,
upgraded
Harris.
account for that demo. But
No
yeah,
problem.
time
So
for
Harris,
questions.
I have some questions from you, from our audiences. The very first question which we have is, how many of these tools have free trial? And if you were to purchase, do they have some kind of bundle package?
Great question. Okay, so Axe for Designers is free. There's no trial needed. You can sign up for beta though, so you'll have to give us your email address there, and then you will get the AI enhancements that I described that will actually give you automatic annotations based on computer vision. Axe Linter for VS Code is free and will always be free, but we are adding support for other IDEs that will be paid features. So VS Code is free, but other IDEs will be paid, and there isn't a self-serving trial for that at the moment. There may be in the very near future. The Axe DevTools browser extension that I just demoed is a freemium product, so you can use it for free to run scans and highlight stuff and all that good stuff. It does have a free trial, so you can test out the IGTs and other pro features like that automatic color contrast resolver. And so yeah, you do get a chance to test that out. And if you already have done a trial previously, and it's expired, or maybe you purchased Axe Pro and it wasn't for you, and you downgraded back to the free plan, with the launch of that user flow analysis, we're actually going to open you up access to an additional free trial to give you a chance to test it out and see if maybe that's a compelling enough reason that you might want to upgrade to Pro again. So keep your eyes out for that. And then the final product I covered was Auditor, which does not currently have a free like online self-serving trial. I believe, if you do talk to sales for any of these products, you can get your hands on some demos and maybe even a trial period. So definitely reach out to us. And then the final part of the question was bundling. Yeah, the Axe DevTools bundle, Axe DevTools HTML, I think it's called, or Axe DevTools for Web, includes the browser extension, linter premium, which is like the linter server, which is super portable and can allow you to add things like pre-commit hooks that will lint the piece of the code that you tested. It'll have GitHub actions that you can add into your CI/CD pipeline. So we have all sorts of API integrations. We have a CLI and the browser extension that's all included in our bundle for web. That's a great question.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so another question is from Stephanie. Are there any plans to incorporate snapshot testing in the Axe testing suite?
Yeah, there's no official plans, but I think we're kind of flirting with that right now, with that notion with the user flow analysis. So we're allowing you to record. It's going to be launched as a beta feature. We just want to get it out to all of you wonderful testers to learn how to best build that feature out. So it's going to be a pretty limited beta feature. As you saw, I just record a flow and I can generate a report with accessibility issues. We haven't yet figured out how that's going to map to things like intelligent guided testing or how it can be maybe used to record scripting in our other products, but there's definitely the possibility there. And then I think that coincides quite a bit with the concept of snapshot testing. So if you have ideas of how you would like to see a product like the browser extension incorporate snapshot testing, please let me know. I'll be on the Axe community Discord. You can email me at harris@dq.com, whatever your preferred means of communication is, but I want all the feedback. I'm the product manager, so I want to hear what you all think.
Thank you so much, Harris. I'll move to next question. How can I sign up for the new user flow analysis beta? So I think I've shared the URL in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, just stay tuned. Like if you want to start your trial for that, wait for us to ship it first, so you don't waste all your trial days before it actually gets shipped. So we'll be making announcements, or if you want to hit me up and give me your contact information, I can reach out to you once it's shipped. But once it is shipped, and like I said, even if you already have an expired trial, you'll be able to reactivate your trial, and I can send you links to that. Irfan probably has already posted that in, but yeah, it's axe.dq.com, and you can look at all the available products there. You can go to the Axe DevTools plans page and upgrade or even purchase from there.
Yep. So it's docs.dq.com. So feel free to have a look at all our products. And the next question is, for color contrast with the text on images, is it testing against the image or background color?
Good question. So it's basically using computer vision. So you can think of it essentially as a screenshot of that element, and then we're actually figuring out where the text is, and then we're using that information to determine what range of colors down to the like literal pixel level to run color contrast analyses on. So for cooked chocolate cake, for example, we'll find that first C character and then look at all the colors that are adjacent or behind the C, and then we'll actually run individual color contrast calculations on each of those. And if it will get an array of color contrast ratios, and if 100% of that, if those ratios exceed 4.5 to 1, then we give you a pass. If some of them don't, we give you a fail. If we aren't able to determine, we'll leave it as need review and allow you as the brilliant human to review it yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Harris. The last question which I have is auto check review feature a pro feature?
Yes. So sorry, that automatic color contrast feature is a pro feature. With pro, you get things like that. You get intelligent guided testing. You get enhanced reporting. You can export your issues to CSV, JSON, or XML. You can generate a share issue report that you can share with your team. So there's a lot of cool features of pro, but as far as the free stuff, you can scan, you can highlight stuff on the page, you can view more information about each of the rules that you've violated, you can inspect the elements, you can see the source code. There's a lot of cool stuff there available for free. So I think if you're just looking to get a start with the free extension, get used to it, run some tests, work through those, and then decide if the pro plan is right for you.
Thank you so much. And guys, if you have any questions, feel free to share your questions in our Axe community Discord channel. I've shared the URL in the chat. And with this, Harris, I have a question from Mariska. She's saying, will we get the recipe to the chocolate cake in the
Ooh, that's a great question. If you go to, here, I'll share it with you in the Zoom chat. If you go to workshop2.dqlabs.com, you can see our fake recipes. We probably pulled them from recipe site. And I don't think I've actually made any of them, but I am hungry. So maybe I'll go home and test out some of these recipes.
Yep. So the session has concluded.